Archaeodeath, Death and Memory, Past and Present, with Professor Howard Williams.
Hey, I didn't think you'd be actually in your full getup. Wow, look at this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Professor. Good afternoon, chat. My name is Chase tonight. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, I had to put the kit on for you today, Professor. I got a new belt, so I had to show it off. I'm quite excited. But yeah. So.
And all I bought is a crappy t-shirt, you know.
Nah, you're extra cool, man. You had archaeologist vibes, dude. So you have the wisdom of the ancients at your beck and call, making you way cooler than I could ever be, sir.
Well, yeah, the ancients make me cool. I'm not cool, but thank you. I appreciate that. I'm in by proxy. I join in. So how? I mean, we just met on this app because I just love your attitude and your style with how you deal with the ridiculous comments you get, but also you do education. You're doing fun, and it's just all the best of TikTok is embodied in what you do. And I just want to sort of say that before we get started. You know, it's really fun to follow you, and thank you for the grace in my silly comedy skit about looking out my window and seeing you. I just had this image of me sort of being this grumpy old sort of British man going, look at him out there, what's he doing, you know. So
And you know what? I love it because I don't know if you can see it, but back there on the hill, there's houses, right? Now, my entire life, there were big trees back there, right? That I didn't even know one of those houses was there my entire life, right? And then last spring, we had a bad storm and one of the old trees fell and like took out an entire little section of the woods back there. I'm like, oh crap, there's people back there that can see me. But, and it's funny because you dropped the skit literally like around the same week that the tree came down.
oh my
So
word.
yeah, it was really, really funny how that worked out.
I don't want to sound like I'm completely compelled to do what my brain tells me to do, but I had this idea of doing it, and then I've been planning it for weeks, and I thought I'm just gonna. I just had this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna record
It was great. It was great. I loved it. My kids loved it. Like, oh my God. Like, out of all of the videos that they've screen watched me, right? And be like, Dad, can I watch that again? That is the one video
Oh,
that they
that's
have asked to watch over and over again. My 7-year-old and my 14-year-old. So you're a hit across the spectrum, sir.
so I would be good in amateur dramatics if I ever went that route of doing. I've only got about 3 or 4 silly posh English accents I go on, and I think you know they're the main stock of my comedy routines of going. I say it's all very Monty Python, you know, so it does link into what we're doing today. You know, talking about the Middle Ages, and because you know it's all from watching Monty Python when too young and
Yeah, it really did get me started. Monty Python and Robin Hood, Prince of Tides with Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman. I was a very strange child. That was my absolute. That and Hamburger Hill were my 2 favorite movies. Hamburger Hill, Glory, and Robin Hood, Prince of Tides. I had on repeat until I got the Ninja Turtles VHS, right? Because I'm ancient, and so that made it into the rotation. But yeah, I've always been a history geek. I have always kind of dressed up and done this even before I knew cosplay would be, even before we knew the internet would be a thing for real. I was running around dressed up as Denzel Washington in Glory, or you know, with the classic plastic knight armor, trying to run around and be Richard the Lionheart. And so, you know, here I am, full circle.
never look back on it. Never leave it behind, my friend, because the number of people. I was just talking about this very subject to my master's students. Is we've got to be critical of the way people use the past, but equally we should never let that destroy the joy. You know, that we it's all about adventure and fun and imagination. And yes, we've got to be. A lot of my channel ends up being about trying to correct misunderstandings, but I'm not trying to be a killjoy shutting people down. I want people to explore this, and every archaeologist and historian I meet, every person who's passionate about the past, it's from fiction, it's from fantasy, and there's nothing dirty or wrong or low about that. And people try to make out this, oh, there's a pure highway to be, and it's all about, you know, the translating original manuscripts or claiming to be, you know. And yes, it's nice to get some real, you know, go to real, you know, sites that link to the stories.
But into that, I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, I fell in love with the Middle Ages because I read this manuscript translation."
Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, I must admit, I've always dealt with the early, well, the 5th to 11th centuries, and for me, you're more the period you're more into. I know that you cover different, but the period you prefer, is a little late for me. So I'm always a bit of a fan looking on to that later stuff, and so I can enjoy that more because I'm not obsessed with it, and that's almost like I've got my own research, and for
Yeah.
me even the Viking stuff is a bit late, so I can joke about that a bit but not
The
be.
fifth century is so lit, though. You picked the best part of the early Middle Ages because I just finished doing a bunch of reading about Belisarius and like the late
Oh
Roman
yeah,
Empire, right? And I'm like, bro, if I could import any like Roman general into the Middle Ages, I would want Belisarius. Like, forget Caesar, right? Forget Hannibal Barca, because
yeah,
they all had resources, right, to deal
yeah.
with. Belisarius had like MacGyver shit, right? They're like, oh, take 500 guys and conquer Italy. And watch out for those Normans over there because they might do some sketchy shit while you're in Sicily. And it's like, hey, he did it. And he's like, oh, do you want to be emperor? He's like, no, I don't want to be emperor. Fucking Justinian is a nut and I'm good. I'm chilling. Right? And it's like, bro. And he's like the most human figure out of all of the Roman generals because what he went through with Theodora. And it's like, bro, like, dude, we can all see ourselves in General Belisarius, and so this is why, like, when I logged on, and I just read it was a book by Havelock is the author's name, right? And it's a
Yeah.
novel of Belisarius, and it's escaping me right now. And I was like, yo, and then here you are talking about the 5th century, and I'm like, yes,
Yeah, I mean,
TikTok is listening, but keep doing it.
it's a really fascinating period, isn't it? And yeah, I love I think there should be a new sort of new TV series called Belisarius MacGyver. So some kind
Yeah,
of
it would really,
how
really
to
like,
fix the Roman
oh my
Empire
god,
with some a
it
few
would be
bits.
great. Like that spoof show they did on the Vikings, but for the late Roman Empire. Oh my God, that would be incredibly epic.
It would be.
And
It would
now
be.
somebody's gonna steal it and not give us any credit.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is actually, so much. I mean, I deal with Roman archaeology and history, but most people's understanding of Roman archaeology and history is early Roman. So they're thinking first, second, early third century max. For me, it's the fifth, it's the late fourth, fifth, sixth. It's late antique. You call it late antique. I call it early medieval. These divisions, these terms, who cares? The point is, that late, everything's going wrong in the West. Everything's breaking up. There's really interesting politics. There's Christian bishops trying to be warlords. Warlords trying to be Christian bishops. There's all sorts of weird stuff going on. Everything's in the air, and it's really interesting. And it's our sort of classic divisions don't work. And so yeah, it's really, and that period captures the imagination as much as the Viking Age because it's all about our modern anxieties about collapsing empires, which we may be experiencing right now.
Right now.
In different empires going up and down and crashing and burning and it's terrifying, and it's not, but it helps us to make sense of the present, I think, in some way, maybe not
We
directly.
avoid some stuff. And you know what's funny, Professor, is once upon a time I used to be managing editor of this tiny indie press called SFF for the Culture, where we put out science fiction and fantasy books by BIPOC and underrepresented authors, right? And one of the things I used to love to say is it's our fantasies, what we love in science fiction and fantasy, that impacts how we touch reality the most, right?
Yeah.
You can look at how somebody moves through the world and tell whether they watch Star Trek or Star Wars. You can see it, right? And it's one of those things where this is what makes it so important, because that's number one, what brings us into the real history, because we want to know what inspired this,
Yeah.
right? And then after that, it's like, yo, if we pay attention to what happens, we know that there's nothing new under the sun. Everybody's reaching back for inspiration because nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. And so now I'm just waiting for an Odasser to pop up. Or I think we already might have Attila. I really do. I think we might have Attila right now. I think he's already been indoctrinated into office. Um,
There's certainly people who seem to be good at wrecking things without actually coming up with solutions. And this is it almost feels like some Stephen King horror movie, actually, gunslinger novels at the moment, of sort of people who seem to be destroying away without any creativity. And so it has that sort of scary feel of the moment of like, I'm going to create another chaos in another part of the world and just leave people in a bigger mess, and that's the way forward. But I mean, you must you also, a lot of your, from what I learned from your channel and from you're very much see the Middle Ages as potential optimism. You see hope as well, don't you? You see a lot.
Yes.
You're a very hopeful guy in your.
I mean, you got to think about people where we think our lives are hard, right? Our modern lives, right? But death does not stalk us the way it did the ancients, right? Where
No.
cuts and bruises could mean the end of everything. So to kind of like, this is why I love the 13th century and the age of mail, right? Because it's one of those times where the armor and weapons are neck and neck, right? Nobody really has the advantage, and you really have to take, it's the indomitability of the human spirit on display every single day up until we hit like the Black Death, and then we hit like capitalism and labor warfare and all sorts of other fun stuff that leads us into the dynamics of the 15th, 16th, and 17th century and various revolutions throughout, you know, former Angevin possessions and such. Like, and I see the fact that people found a way to make things happen, to create beauty, to create family, to even create empire in a world where everything was temporary. Nobody knew anything was going to last past the generation. Nobody knew if anybody was going to remember their name, right? Monasteries burned down with alarming regularity. Everything was made of paper and heated with fire, and nobody knew. But they strove anyway. And to me, that's the best part about the Middle Ages. I think that's why so many people fall in love with it, right? As opposed to like the space age, because it's not as clinical, it's not as sanitary, and it's literally the malleability of the world at that point.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, actually, Chase. And I think that I haven't heard it said better at all. Actually, it's, you don't have to valorize it. You don't have to imagine it was all clean and everyone was dressed like a sort of Bill and Ted, sort of that's my sort of, that stylized sort of clean but funny Middle Ages. It was dirty, there were horrors, but equally it wasn't all misery. There's you always find something about humanity in every period of the past, but it sits before some of the more horrible and modern era stuff, and you can sort of find a more hopeful sort of balance there, I think.
Yeah, I think that we have this crappy take thanks to the Victorians, right? And they knew what they were doing. It's like, all right, prime example. In America right now, they'd be like, oh, for like the last 20 years, people are like, oh, you think this is bad? Well, this isn't like it was during Jim Crow. And my mother is 78 years old, right? So she was there. My sister integrated her elementary school, right? And so they say, like it's within, within my own house, right? We have those generations that go down, and people are like, oh, well, it's not as bad as it was back then. Like, there was lead paint and everything. The general IQ was 40 points lower. Nobody knew better. They invented laws since then. This is why the old people made everything illegal, right? So we can't start making those apples to oranges comparisons just by throwing dirt on the past and saying it was all crap. And we should just accept what is going on now with grace, because the past was just so awful. And I feel like this is a playbook that's they're trying to run out all over again. Like they're definitely trotting out the medieval sort of between the church doing one of these, right? And we have this contraction of politics and this sort of regionalization. It's interesting. Like really, I would love to see what historians of future generations write about what we're going through right now, right? And whether or not they'll call it a dark age, because I think about how the steps we've taken back just with intellectualism in 5 years, right? From the pandemic till now.
Yeah.
I see how people treat people just trying to share information. It's like, oh, damn, are we going to be talking about the dark age of the late to mid 2000s? Like in 150 years, 200 years?
It does worry me how however you want to put it, the slide towards manufactured consent to saying the obnoxious and saying the unthinkable. And, I'm even looking back a few years at our even television series parodying it, and things that are horrible then are now acceptable. So I was watching the season 2 of The Boys, and they're talking about someone going, oh, and now that's no longer funny because that's literally what people are doing. And it's rapid and it's quick, and people are easily bullied into accepting what's normal. And that's what frustrates me. So we have to find an anchor in the Middle Ages. Sorry, go on.
Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy? right?
No.
This guy ends up like cryogenically frozen by accident and wakes up in the future in America, and they're watering the crops with Gatorade, and the president. Oh man, it's scary. I remember watching this as I was a senior in high school, 2005, and I remember watching this movie like the summer before school started. And it's like, ha ha ha! Oh, that's so stupid. We'd never be that stupid, right? We'd never. And now in 2025, I was like, we are that stupid,
Well, that's the thing.
right?
We can't. I mean, people police my language a lot, and when we say things like, we're not talking about people who just have educational needs that are more challenging. We're talking about a contrived, deliberate, active choice to not engage with evidence-based understandings of the world. And that is, I'm happy to respect people's different spiritualities, different attitudes, different personal, but we're talking about a structural ignorance. We're talking about deliberate structural ripping away of people's knowledge.
Miseducation. We got to call it what it is, right? Miseducation, right?
Yeah.
Because people get all scared when you use the term indoctrinated. They want to get offended, like they lead with their feelings when you use that term indoctrination, because they feel like it's implied something against their intelligence. No. You were educated, right? Because if they indoctrinated you, you'd fight against it. Instead, they put information out there, they manipulated it, and then here we go where we have to argue with people where they think that the Sahara Desert was this impassable barrier between, just some of the most ingenious humans to walk the ancient world, and to this day, they're still doing insane things in West Africa, right? And it's like, bro, where did y'all go to school?
Yeah.
Who left y'all behind? But you have to understand, like you said, at play, when you say I Write the Crowd by Gustave Le Bon because my brother was a leftist, right? And he made me read things like this when I was young, right? And so I understand how groupthink lowers general IQ, right? And I was a football player, right? I watched what happened, right? Once we set foot on the field, we got together. Like it was an intelligent conversation when there was three of us, but when the rest of the offensive line filters into the locker room, it's Planet of the Apes now. And when it's funny, we can laugh at it, but it's one of those things where we forget that now when we're at a rally or, even when we're just sitting in a town hall meeting getting radicalized by a guy making a very wrong but well-reasoned argument, that we can get caught up in this.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the way that people, I don't know if this is taking it in a different direction. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I've seen various videos where you see reactions to comments where people see you dressed in this way. And there's a number of different things I want to ask you about this, because you know where I'm going to go. The first thing I want to ask, though, is people assume you're being violent, that you are, by waving a sword around in a completely empty space, that you are being aggressive. Do you get that a lot, or is that now into the background and people understand what you're doing?
This is what I'll say. It's one of those things where it took me a second to notice it was happening at first, right? Because I've kind of, growing up, kind of get used to these things, right? Like, I was a defensive lineman coach to aggression from like 13 to 20, right? I was a big guy, and so you kind of get used. I used to be a 300-pound defensive lineman, believe it or not.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, like one of these days I'll post a picture. I'm like, yeah, I was really twice the man I am today. But so you kind of get used to minimizing or people just assuming certain things are threatening, to the point where I was just like completely tuning out certain microaggressions until like I realized one day, hey, my son's on this app.
Yeah.
Right. And like you asked me like how I respond to the comments. It's like I have a son that has to navigate this world, that has to navigate this identical hatred. Right. He doesn't have to be putting himself out there in the public sphere to have to deal with. Right. And so it's like he's watching. Right. And a lot of other young people are watching.
Yeah.
What I do and how I deal with it. And like, I get DMs and people are like, dude, thank you for just existing, man, because I was so embarrassed, right, to just admit that I like this stuff. And then here you are, right? Or I do this too, but I never show my face on my account. Right.
This is the thing. I mean, it sounds like we're not celebrities, but we're all just small creators, but there are people who genuinely need to see us for different reasons. Some of it to do with what we look like, some of it to do with what we say, some of it to do with what we do. But it's important. And there are people who genuinely need to know. There are people who study this stuff, or people who love this stuff, or people who have a pushback, because otherwise all they see is the barrage of negative comments, the barrage of, Africans didn't do this, medieval people didn't do that. That's the wrong belt to go with that sword, or some crap. I'm not saying I've seen that. I'm just saying that's the kind of stuff.
I understand the pedantry
Yeah,
and the
pedantry. Yeah.
of history, and it's like part of it is like, okay, there has to be a certain degree of pedantry because you need pedantry to catalog, right? And it's like, no, this isn't a type 13 sword, it's a type 12 because of this and this and this. But it gets to a certain point where you use it as a barrier.
Yeah.
Right. And people, like, I remember when I first got into swords, right? I went on myarmory.com to ask a question in a forum about African swords and concentrations of force, because I was learning, right? And I first learned that, you can't harm somebody in plate armor with a sword because of blade geometry and stuff like that. And then, like, I see all of these stunning blade shapes from Africa. And so I go to ask in the place where you ask such things, because there was no TikTok yet.
Yeah.
And it was like, the way these dudes roasted me, I deleted my profile, right? And I refused to engage for years. I think that it took me until I found the Historical African Martial Arts Association to start re-engaging, right? And to put my feet back in it, right? Because I've been doing this stuff. I got my first sword and set of kit back in 2018, right? I've been studying historical martial arts since I was in high school. I tried to fence and started fighting, and the fencing coach said, no, this is not for you. We're going to teach you HEMA, because that is fighting, and Buhurt, because that is fighting, and we're not going to teach you to fence, because that would be teaching you not to fight, and we need that for football, so that would be bad. Yeah. So he chess moved me and taught me Fior and stuff like that, and got me into that, so I wasn't losing fencing matches at our hood ass school with its first ever fencing program being the hoodlum. So,
but it's so easily to be put off, isn't it? And I must admit, academia is tough, competitive, and snipey, and I have been that person too. I've been really not in an aggressive, as in physically aggressive, but I've been very critical of other scholars to their faces in formal venues, and I have been likewise recipient of that, and it is tough. But but people think actually it should be easier in online forums and stuff. It's actually not. It's actually harder. And it's so easy for people to perform knowledge they don't even have. So at least if I'm saying your presentation you just given had 3 major flaws and here they are, if I'm wrong, other people in the room will go, no, and they'll back up the other person. But if you're on one of these forums, it's very easy to feel utterly demoralized, targeted. And, most people will just go, right, forget it. I'm not doing that then. If that's, and so it takes a lot of bravery, and I genuinely mean courage in these online spaces, to show your face, to stick to what you're saying, and build an argument. And, people will say you've got things wrong because they only listen to one sentence out of the whole argument. But, you've got to have that conviction, not that we're always right, but that what we're saying is part of a constructive dialogue, and we need to stick. But, so all power to you for keeping going and finding another way rather than being put off.
It's one of those things where it's funny because people think that calling me names and stuff is going to really, like, bro, I played football in the early 2000s in Fairfield County in Connecticut, right? And I don't know if you know anything about Fairfield County, but this is the county where Greenwich is. So Oprah has a house here, and Tom Hanks has a house here, and everywhere around my city is a very, very high income place. And this is where I played my sports for my entire childhood, right?
Wow.
Until I took my adult ass to an HBCU to play some college football because I was sick of it, right? But it's like, you're not gonna, like, I've been dealing with this since I was a child, bro.
Yeah.
People really seem to think like I'm older than some people assume, right? Yeah. And so it's like, bro, I remember the first Xbox Live chat rooms where you could say whatever you want, where there was no virtue signaling online and social media, and it was really the wild, wild west. Like there was no such thing as a filter, right? And you couldn't make things stop, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes the online forum so different. If you're out in public, there's certain things. There's a line, right, that people will
Yeah.
cross or they won't cross, or that you can just leave, right? And then if somebody follows you or chases you down, this is an entirely different situation and a face-to-face social setting, right? A lot of things people say online they're not gonna say to me in public, right? This one guy came up to me at a protest. It was like, you know what, dude? I talked hella trash to you on Instagram, and then here you are in front of me, and I'm sorry.
Oh,
I had no
that
clue
takes
who
a
this guy
bravery
was.
to.
But it's like you never know when your words come back around to bite you. And that's to me what I loved about the Middle Ages is like you never knew when the person you was talking to was a violent axe or stick murderer, and any blunt or heavy object could be a weapon, and you could be unalived very easily, and nobody could say or do anything about it, especially if the person was good at fighting. You just had to be cool.
You have to. I mean, it's like any small face-to-face society. Almost every society outside of the digital world, you f around and find out. You consequences. There's always going to be consequences. So that's why I say to people, and I genuinely mean it. The way that certain of the Viking Brosatru behave. That's my mocking word for some of those that really internalize. I mean, it's one thing for us to try to be in the but they claim it in a very supremacist way. They're very into that. I think they would last literally 5 seconds in the early Middle Ages. You couldn't afford to be this kind of person because you don't know who you may be picking on one person and their brother may be just over the other side of the mead hall or whatever. And you've got to be. So all of those, the half a mile and all the cautionary narratives about watch your side, watch your back. Be careful of drinking too much. Be careful. This isn't just some abstract conception. This is how you survive to your 30s and 40s, man. This is how you don't get whatever you say shoved back down your throat so far with all the teeth you had in your mouth. Because it's I'm not trying to be too brutal here, but I'm just saying this. And so people say to me, because I'm not the most muscular guy, oh, I'm the one that's would survive 5 minutes. No, man, I may not survive very long, but I'll survive longer than that. These big mouths, because they wouldn't know what to do if they came face to face with any of this.
You can't be doing. That's one thing I learned. Like I tell people all the time, right? Like, because somebody's like, yo, people threaten me quite a bit, and I'm like, bro, I've been fighting my whole life, right?
Yeah.
Like I came up with when karate was big. Right. And then where I'm from, this is a medium-sized city. We had a karate school every couple blocks. Like there was really like I loved Cobra Kai because right, like how they were having like karate beefs and shit like that. Like it brought me back to how things was when I was young, because you really would have people walking around like that. Like it's part of the culture and the grit of where I come from. So it's like, bro, people that are real gangsters are outside doing gangster shit. Not habitually online trolling. Because if you're a gangster, you know that you're accountable for the shit that comes out of your mouth. Right? Like when I got my business degree, I wrote my final thesis in business ethics on the fact that the threshold should be in legitimate business is if it would get you red rummed and illicit business, you shouldn't do it in the corporate world. Because there's a lot of things that happen in the corporate world that if you try to do it in the streets, your own people are going to get rid of you because it's absolute skullduggery, right? And so it's like, yo, if somebody, back to what you were saying, right? If somebody's going to hold you accountable in a painful way, right? Which was something that you constantly lived around the corner, right? In your imagination within the Middle Ages, right? Whether God was going to punish you for some transgression, right? Because, and people don't get that the selling of like allowances and stuff by the Catholic Church monetized human behavior against humans, right? And I'm pretty sure if pooping and peeing could have been a sin, the church would have been like, nope, you owe us a tithe, a defecation tithe, because angels did not shit. So you have to pay us because it's a sin to shit. Because angels don't shit, so why are you shitting? Stop shitting now, right? And it's like, but this is, and then it's funny, we laugh at it, but honestly, that was a mindset that started after they made Pelagius a heretic, and we're still dealing with it several thousand years later.
So, I mean, I'd love to hear more about your own novels and your own how you're
Oh
taking the
yeah.
Middle Ages into the future. I mean, what could you give us viewers a little bit of a sense of that?
Yeah, so I have 2 sets out, right? My first series is called, you want to say, it's called the Vanguard series, and you can read the first 2 books and one omnibus called Once Upon a Time in Bridgeport. And it takes place in the not so distant future after a second Trump administration where medieval weapons have become the only weapons, forcing unlikely heroes from around the world to unite their communities against tyranny backed by dark magic. I am going to give you folks a trigger warning. It's going to look like I spoke a lot of things. I started writing in 2018 before there was ever during the first Trump administration. Right? I knew there was going to be a second Trump administration. I kind of knew bits and pieces about Project 2025 because I read about such things. And if you read bills, right, then you learn stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I thought it was so far-fetched, I wrote it into my fiction.
And here we are.
Here we are. And then also I have my latest project is called An Age of Lions. This was like my baby. It was like literally, this was the book I was researching for when I wrote The Road to Resistance and the Vanguard series, right? I was really researching for this book because I wanted to write a book that made the people of color we see in the manuscripts and illustrations give them a story, because we always see them and there's very sparse notes, or it gets dismissed as this biblical scene, or everybody's Balthazar, right? Or Saint Maurice, right? Everybody, oh, that black guy, that's Saint Maurice, and the other black guy is Saint Maurice too. Oh, who's that? Oh, that's the other Saint Maurice, right? Even though there's 3 of them in the picture, like everybody can't be Saint Maurice. And so I kind of, especially like in 2018, 2016, 2015, when I really started wanting to write a book where I could see stuff like this, right? But with folk that look like me, right? Because you get no taste of that, right? And then you read Christian or Miles Cameron and Steven Erickson, right? Where I got real deal black characters in a fantasy book that didn't come from some mystical hole on the map.
Yeah.
South.
So that's the way out, isn't it? They're from some mystical,
they come from, or he was captured by somebody and brought here against his will, and now he's just angry and black and beats the shit out of people.
Yeah,
right?
So it's either Morgan Freeman, which is no bad thing, but it's
or
either
Sam
that
Jackson.
or But that's the thing, is it able to, because I think this is the point, isn't it? Is that outside of those that would deny any people of color presence in the medieval world, however you geographically define the medieval world, because it's a nonsense term anyway, but the Middle Ages, the European Middle Ages, you have the tropes. We'll put one in, but it'll be and it's about trying to show just people being people, isn't it? Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think it's also one of those things where they try to make it feel like tokenism was something that was always done.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a very, very modern contrivance. Well, no, I wouldn't even say that. I say we don't get tokenism until the late 14th century, 15th century, where you would have a certain, we need the court this or the court that. And this is the guy that does the thing because he is from the people. Right. And he's going to do the thing that the people do because he's from them people. But back then, the world was outside of the ranks of nobility, right? Where everybody's a Nepo baby, right? And even then, there's levels to the shit because it's a meritocracy. If you were booby, irresponsible, and perhaps maybe a little unstable, nobody was letting you lead anything maybe but a doom charge to get rid of your ass so they could marry you off your daughters and wife to somebody different that might do smarter things, right?
Yeah.
But there had to be merit there. Right? Like William Marshall isn't the William Marshall we know and love because he was born, into a noble family. No, there was a bunch of other assholes around the castle, right, that were hostages right along with William Marshall, and he proved that he was more useful than all the other hostages, more useful and better at fighting, and he followed instructions better, which is something nobody in this day and age appreciates. Right? I can follow instructions, and that's merit. And we don't have that now. Right? We think that we have this merit-based society. No, no, because there's no merit in capitalism, but that's a whole different life.
Yeah, no, this is the thing I was trying to gently say. I did a video about I mean, it's very flattering that people think I have a nice accent. They like listening to my accent and my British accent, particularly my North American followers. They love a British accent, but I also know there's privileges coming just with that voice, right? I mean, I have a different voice I use in my classroom, on here, and informally. And so if I talk to my parents, I've got a much more regional accent because I'm talking to them. You know, I'm not trying to be fake, but you know, we
call it code switching here.
Yeah, code. Right? Yeah. You know,
we call it code switching, where you don't use your regional dialect in mixed company because, number one, you don't always want people knowing where you come from. That's a lot of information, right? And then number two, people might not understand you.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to Alabama and I could only hang out with people from Detroit because nobody else knew what the hell was coming out of my mouth.
But that's the thing. It's we're all aware of these online sort of dynamics, and we're all performing, but we're trying to be honest performers. I mean, I'm not trying. I wouldn't like to pretend I'm from sort of, you know, I occasionally do silly accents, but it's obvious I'm not trying to mock any individual, although I've been accused of that. But you know, occasionally I do sort of my US, you know, Hollywood trailer, you know, voice of, you know, next season, you know, and my wonderful Californian friend says you have the worst American accent. I don't care. I'm not trying to do a good accent. I'm just trying to do like the worst kind of parody. But you know, we've got to have.
It's for the bit. I said it's for the bit. It's not supposed to be good.
Yeah, exactly. And we've all got to sort of have these, and you know, I do my Ragnar Lothbrok occasionally. I haven't done that for a while, actually. My sort of someone trying to do an Australian trying to do a Scandinavian accent done by a Brit trying to sound like an Australian doing you know. But you know,
curved horns. I'll never forget that. I fucking loved that show. I did. It was so bad and so good because it was so bad.
Absolutely. I've just been talking to my students about that too. But it's you know, but in terms of what you take from the Middle Ages in the modern, your social media, you know, it's you do keep it really positive. You keep it, but you also, I think, really good about what you do is you don't make it all about you. You are showcasing these ideas, and you're the front to it. But you're doing a really, I think you've got the right balance of being an educator in the best way, because you're showcasing, you're using yourself, but then you're always bringing it to the evidence. You're always taking it to the issues, and not making it about you doing the thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really good balance. I mean, I don't know if that's something you've consciously done or it just happens naturally.
You know, in the past life I was a battle rapper, right? And you can still find my music out and about online, but it's one of those things where it's a different. When I started making content and when I became a writer, right, I had no clue. Like, I felt so. This is gonna sound crazy for a rapper to say. It felt so self-aggrandizing that it didn't feel genuine at all. So I feel more comfortable bringing it back to the history, bringing it to connect to the audience, right? Because I get that I piss people off simply by existing in this space. And I love that because my ancestors have literally been doing this since before America was America, right? Since New Spain, right? And like, people, you have no place in this culture. Meanwhile, I had somebody run through my entire family tree and find out not only am I descended from the Browns of Rutledge, who were knights and sheriffs of Rutledge, but through them, there's Plantagenets and fucking William the Conqueror in my family tree. So it's like, really, you have to, like, how can I put this? Growing up, my church minister growing up, like the guy that ran the church when I was little, used to say something before every time he got in the pulpit. He said, you know what, Lord, let people see more of you and less of me so that the work could get done. Right? And that's just an approach that I try to carry when I'm not rapping, because like it's a completely different thing. But like, like, I just want people to learn, and I just want to connect with people and share what makes me happy and get people into this, because like society sucks right now. It sucks. Things are very medieval. We have tyranny, and we have people setting up pocket fiefdoms with gerrymandering maps and all sorts of shit. And if you know, you know, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
why not go
Well,
back? Why not get medieval in the best ways, in the fun ways, in the way that edifies our community and edifies ourselves? Like, I discovered who I was the first time I put this armor on.
but
Right?
that's the
Like,
point, isn't it? Is that you are using the past in a constructive and selective way, not to be authentic to yourself, rather than to some fiction that would harm others. Whereas a lot of people use the Middle Ages to construct a future of a tribal, certain groups only
yeah.
fantasy, which would never work. Which would
No,
never
oh my
work.
God. I'll never forget somebody. I spoke to this guy, this Hausa man, one day, and he goes, "It will never, ever, ever stop amazing me how small of a tribe white people are. And if they ever want to resort to tribal warfare, I think it'll last about 3 days." And I laughed for the whole rest of the bus ride because, you know, there's a lot of Hausa people, right? Just in Nigeria, not even counting the rest. And I'm like, yeah, you know, when you have, 46 million people that speak your mother tongue, right? You can poke your chest out like that, bro. That's more than the population of entire countries in Europe, right? And it's like, wow, bro, like, how did you get there? Like, who hurt you, right? That has you out here reaching back to use the past as a shield and a bludgeon both, right? And when I first became a writer, I got recruited to my former publisher by this guy who used to be a white supremacist, right? And he's like, yo, you know what? One day, he's like, I got my girlfriend took and my ass beat by black guys in the same day. Right? In the same day. And he said, yo, I spent the next 20 years of my life taking that out on everybody black that would let me. Right? Until one day I woke up and realized how miserable and sick and small it made me feel. And I just wanted my life to be different. Right? And it's like, he's like, yo, hopefully, we can still be friends because, he was a skinhead. I'm like, bro, everybody can change if they choose to change.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing. People don't realize what they steal from themselves, how they close themselves off for real by creating micro ethno states.
Yeah, and they'll never be happy because there'll always be some other enemy to blame for the problems, regardless of what it is. Whether it's and that's the thing. It's a never-ending spiral until they're just empty husks of people who don't. They'll be just shouting at the moon or shouting at the clouds. Your old man shouts at cloud type Homer Simpson meme.
For more minor things.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if there were no black people, what would happen to gingers?
Yeah. Exactly. My good friend on this app, Jono, we have a bit of a ginger banter because he's very red-headed, but I won't bring it to this live, but we have a sort of behind-the-scenes sort of...
son and grandson of gingers. My mom had red hair, my grandmother had red hair, I had an aunt that was a ginger. Because my family's Creole, so there's like a little bit of everything in there, and like I was just very pleased that my children didn't come out with red hair and freckles.
Well, I think the point is, if people don't want people of color claiming that heritage, then maybe it was that you should take that up with your own ancestors.
And that's my favorite clapback. If you don't want me here in this armor, then maybe you should have told your ancestors to stay on their side of the fence.
Exactly.
Right. And it's funny because people be like, oh, well, you're descended from slaves. Like, well, no, actually what had happened was my 5 times great grandmother was the proprietress of Cane River, Louisiana. And when these wealthy Southern planters wanted to increase their wealth, right, and this land continuum that stretched from like Mississippi to Texas, they married their half-black son to this other mixed race property bearing, because it was, people don't get it, that in New Spain, the caste system, it was weird. It was more fluid, yet more rigid than the American system in a lot of ways, right? And it created a lot of weird shit that I'm still watching play out in my family to this day, because you had cousins owning cousins and siblings owning other siblings to protect rights because you have more rights as property. Like, and so it's like, bro, you could try to throw shots and throw shade, but my family's been free since before this country was a country.
And in terms of where you're taking it next, Chase. I mean, obviously, every video is different, and I love the way you sort of mix up different music and different styles, and you've got quite a wardrobe now. You're not doing one role here. You're doing quite a lot. I mean, have you got any sort of vision of where you want to take it, or is it still just sort of see what happens?
So I am a huge fan of the William Gold series, right? Written by Christian Cameron, who like really red pilled me back into like HEMA and the Middle Ages and stuff like that, because he made it live, right? And so I want this 14th century, maybe early 15th century transitional resplendent kit like my hero Christian, right?
Oh.
Like, because I like being shiny, man. I got these pauldrons and I got a little taste of it, and now like I kind of can't stop myself, because this is life's most expensive hobby, but boy is it fun. And so like eventually I would like to have three things, right? The first thing, like I said, is to finish off my 13th century kit, right? To get the full male look that the reenactors get on me for not having trusses. I'm sorry for my lack of trusses, sirs. Right, and I'll extend my Haberrock, I promise you, as soon as I can afford it. But then I want to do like the 14th century transitional look, because to me, I feel like I'm claustrophobic, chat, right? And Professor, I'm very claustrophobic, right? Like I have a little heart attack every time I put my mail on. Like, and if you look at videos where I'm putting it on, slow it down to watch my face. I'm freaking out, right?
Really?
And,
oh, wow.
So I like the floating plates.
Oh, I think you may have accidentally swiped away. This happens so much with my TikToks, is you touch the screen at all. And I just want to say, while Chase is sorting it out, I really appreciate all the comments everyone's been leaving. Some really nice comments, having a lot of really good feedback, and people are saying how it's lovely. They love your content, Chase, and they love what you're doing. So it's really great to see the positivity in the comment section. And that's the lovely thing about going live is, there's always a random person. I've seen Meg has been booting a few weirdos out, but most people are just so delighted to see people having a chat.
You know what I was about to say? Your chat is great. Like your chat is so great, man. Like I have not seen like either that or your mods are exceptionally.
Oh, she's good. She's got a couple of seconds delay before things come up. So I've seen people have been disappearing before they've even had a chance to breathe or open their mouths for us, because she's going boom out. So I think she's doing a great job. But no, yeah, I've been in lives where it's been really quite scary how much there is. I've been yeeting, says Meggie. You have. And if anyone wants to follow Meg, she's a Norse pagan who's a really great comedian and intelligent, insightful, wise beyond her years, a speaker of ancient truths. And she does her own fun stuff, and she calls out nonsense in her own stuff as well. So, but thank you so much for doing this, Meggie. Wise beyond your years. Yes, that's the phrase I'm going to keep at, whether you like it or not. But no. So yeah, you're going to basically time jump sort of 50, 100 years forward in your kit, and you're going to build a bigger repertoire, is what I get.
Are we still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. I threw my phone at the ground just because it's good luck, believe it or not. Yeah, I'd like to jump about 100 years forward, because I have a friend of mine who I have promised a William Gold and Richard Moussard cosplay. And for those that don't know, Richard Moussard was a black man who was an English knight who ended up in the service of the Count of Savoy, the Green Count of Savoy, right? Which shows the globalism of the medieval world. Because here we have this gentleman that presumably came from somewhere between North Africa, West Africa, and East Africa, right? Or shit, he could have come from Yemen, for all we know. We don't.
No.
Right? But they say he was brown, right? And he was born in England, traveled to France as a roydier, right? And from being a mercenary, somehow ended up as bodyguard to the Green Count of Savoy. And it's a great show of social mobility, right? In the Middle Ages, at a time where people think you were just kind of locked into a caste, right? And and my friend is red-haired and I'm brown like Richard Moussard, so we got to do it. And I want to copy the armor, and I think it'll be a great tribute to Christian, who I feel like influenced not just me, but a lot of other people. Like, you know what I've noticed? A lot of the coolest people that I've met that are into this and do harness fighting or armored, they're Christian Cameron fans or Miles Cameron fans. Like, and everything I've read from him is low-key multicultural. Like, he wrote a series about Amnestos of Plataea, right, which is a little bit before your time period, but he fought at Marathon. He was one of those guys where he wasn't one of the major players, yet he was somehow everywhere. He was like the Oliver North of ancient Greece. Yeah, you gotta have ball knowledge if you get that one. Like, if anybody in the chat gets that, I am quite pleased. But that series, right? There's people there from Nubia, right? There's these characters, Dula and Sekla, and they show this interconnectedness, right? And I feel like if you have a place in your imagination for that, right, then you don't have any problems with me doing what I do. They don't have problems with you speaking truth to hateful power, right? When people try to bastardize information or weaponize information to miseducate people for political means, right? Because, I mean, that's one thing I tell people all the time is you don't get tyranny without ignorance, right? Is one of those things where it's got to be symptomatic, because smart people ask questions, and it's hard to control a bunch of people asking questions. You as a teacher can attest to this.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, we don't have to paint the Middle Ages as like an airport in a modern world with people from literally dropping off plane. But equally, and many people were living locally to where they grew up. But every town, every major port, every any group will have representations of people, and they won't necessarily be recording this. People think we have so much better records than we have rich records, but they're not going to know the difference of someone. They wouldn't even use the geographical references of Yemen or Mali, or these are the modern terms or modern areas, you know. So people are desperate for detail that is not there, and we use that to deny the diversity that we have in our sources. So we don't have all the answers. But when I say to people, look, we've got evidence of people in early Anglo-Saxon England who were of West African ancestry, it doesn't mean every second person walking down the settlement was, was a person of colour. All it means is that everyone would have had sight of and knowledge of someone, and that they're an important part. It doesn't mean that every Briton was originally a uniformity of whiteness or anything else. It's about understanding the connectedness, and you said that word. That's the point. So it's people are so triggered by this, and it's not about trying to wash the past in any particular shade. It's about trying to understand that history is complicated, history is diverse. People were traveling long distances, and everyone goes, oh, they would have been enslaved. No, maybe not. Most people that's the way out, because they're trying to use a modern mindset to block onto the path, push onto the past. But we've just got to having the possibility, discussing the possibilities, and then you are taking it to the next level, because you're not just simply discussing abstract possibilities. You're playing roles of people that we have verified historical information for, and this is both empowering, I think, and also just honest. It's honest history, and that's what really triggers people. But anyway, that's my rant.
Thank you so much, Professor. Like, you're great. And I just want to take a second to edify you, because I know people have been trying to come at you for being a person of integrity, because it'd be so easy just to be like, yo, you know what? I could just fall in with the trolls and make money, right? Yeah, and do this. But you've just handled all of this nonsense with such integrity that, like, you inspired me. Like, I get a little spicy sometimes, and I'm like, nah. What would Howard say? Or Howard might read this comment. Let me not say this, so that I don't lower myself in the opinion of the professor, because I really respect you for what you do. You've taught me so much, and it's like, dude, it takes so much work to make history fun. Yeah. Right, and to get people engaged, that you do it so effortlessly, and so I just want to.
Thank you so much. I mean, what I would say is there's a lot of things I can't talk about online, here, now, or anywhere. But I assure people I do my research before I point out issues. I don't get everything perfect, because we're talking in sentences that come out. But the fact is, I do my research, I know my shit, and I'm not going to be just gassing about things I don't understand. And if people get triggered because they've heard a soundbite version of something I never even said or something I said they don't understand, that is a responsibility of them to think through. That's not my problem. That's a them issue. So, I mean, all I can say is I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep on doing this stuff. And I don't have a big community of supporters, but I have a really great connections that people who set me straight and give me a bit of guidance and a bit of moral support. I really appreciate it, and you included. And it's really important to keep. We have to point out the nonsense, but we have to. Most of my content is about trying to educate, take people places, and some of my videos are just so simple. It's just like, here's something. Da, da, da. And because people don't want a lecture every time, and this stuff is available online, but it's about giving people a way in. Here I am going for a walk, and here's something old. Here's a thought, and it gets people thinking, and that's what we've all got to do, isn't it?
As an American, I love that because, right, I come from New England, right? This piece of land behind me actually used to be a strip of reservation for the Golden Hill Pagasa tribe, right? And they can't build on this land because technically it still belongs to the Golden Hill Pagasa tribe. And it's funny because years later, my children's mother and my children are Narragansett Indians, right? And the Narragansett tribe were kind of like hegemons of the region. So they speak a same root language and, had wampum connections to the Golden Hill Pagussets,
Wow.
the Shinnecocks on Long Island. And so it's like I brought stuff back. Like, hey, look, I brought your descendants back here. But I can't point to a lot of history, right? I live the 6 blocks from Kings Highway, like the original Kings Highway, right? It runs through my hometown. And we have stuff like that, but we have nothing ancient, nothing truly ancient. And so for you to be able to walk up to a hill, right? That would just be a hill in America. We wouldn't know shit about it, right? And say, hey, this is the burial mound of such and such and such and such. Or this was the site of this battle that you read about in all of these historical fiction books, but you've never been able to put eyes on the place. And for me, as somebody who lives in a country that lacks that connection, doesn't like the history, it lacks the connection to it. Like, that's just something that is just utterly delightful, and I appreciate it ever so much.
As Drake says in the comments, come visit Cymru, come visit Wales. The thing is, what people have to remember is that the past isn't an Instagram reel. It's not an Instagram. I say Instagram, it could be TikTok, but there's drone photography beautified. Now, I visit some not everything is captured on camera, but I try to give it. I'm not trying to do slick content, but I want people to realize these are real places that are just by someone's house. I'm not, and not everyone is. There are iconic sites. There's the beautified, manicured English heritage castles and stuff. Yeah, we've got and Cadw sites. We've got the beautiful sites in Britain, but we also have just things nearby, and they're not. We don't know if they're our ancestors made them or other people's ancestors, and we've got to just respect that story, even if we don't have all the answers, and connecting to it, as you say, with that land. It's not about saying it's ours and not anyone else's, but it's about saying this is the story of this place, and here's what we know. And it's amazing the number of people who don't know what's in their locality. And I am guilty of this too, and I keep reminding people I'm supposedly an expert. And the number of times I've been driving along a road, cycling along a lane, walking down a snicket or whatever you call them in the States, but a sort of little path between houses, and sort of going, hang on, isn't an alley or something? Hang on, isn't this near another site? And I'd look it up online and go, oh my God, I've literally been walking over an Iron Age site and I hadn't realised it, or something like that. I don't have it all in here. I'm learning too. I'm getting it wrong. I'm, encountering, discovering, not by digging up everything, but by looking at records and working out what previous generations have found. Yeah. So we're all on that journey. And I cycled along a lane for years before I realized that a monument I actually study is literally a couple of meters, a couple of feet on the other side. And I thought I'd got it into my head. It goes a different direction. It's a big linear bank and ditch. I thought it was somewhere else. And I got it into my head. No, it's not there. It's somewhere else. And I thought, but that is a big bank and ditch in that field. But that can't be it. And then I've just sort of this moment. No one was there, but that embarrassed moment in front of a computer, looking at a map, going, "Oh yes, that's it. That's it."
Definitely is it.
And just to myself, you just sort of look into this and go, oh, because we're all dumb in a nice way. We all get things wrong, and we all just don't connect things up. And I think that's the beauty of learning, is we get things wrong, we forget things. And but my backup plan for when they finally sack me is I'm going to become an Uber driver called Archeo Uber. And for every fair, there'll be a detour, whether they like it or not, to look at something ancient, and I'll bore them with a little lecture about, and on the right you can see a Roman villa, and they'll be going, I'm trying to get to my, I go, I'll tell you, no, another couple of minutes, I'll take you to see this. So they're probably sort of sounds like a horror movie, actually, sort of you're trapped now in Uber, but
There used to be this show called, it was a taxi show where they get in a taxi and they'd ask you questions. Cash cab, there we go, right? It'd be like cash cab, except for with history. And it's like, oh no, I can't let you go until you learn at least one fact about the past.
That's it, isn't it?
Destination. That's your fare. The fare is knowledge that you have to retain.
It sounds like something like a kind of sort of the stereotype of the wise sort of master at the sort of Kill Bill 2 or whatever, or the sort of got to test the person, Archeo Uber, you must pass this test, young.
All right, but you know what, and that's the thing about it, and I love what you said and how you said it, and it's like, it doesn't matter who has ownership of what's there. It's about how we connect to the story of the past and our contribution to it, right? Because everybody, like in England, is one of those places where it's such a layered tapestry of stuff that you really can't, like, some stuff is Roman and some stuff is Britain and then some stuff is Celtic from Celts that came from Iberia, and it's like you really can't, because everybody apparently liked that island enough to stay there for a little bit. And it's like, what does our layer of history add to this stack of the human story that somehow is going to be one day buried under 1,000 years of detritus, and they're going to be looking at our cell phones in some type of silicone trash heap one day trying to figure out what the hell they were?
They're probably already doing that in some parts. I mean, honestly, one of my sidelines is contemporary archaeology, the archaeology of modern life, and there's studies of cell phones, there's studies of space junk, stuff outer space and stuff that's come back to Earth. There's studies of plastic pollution, and it's both scary but also important, because it shows that even if you look at the last couple of generations, we're transforming the planet. And I don't want to get all lectury and environmental, but we've only got one planet, cliche, but and understanding the deep time past, because people recycled, people created rubbish, people trashed their environment. The ancestors weren't all just sort of hippies sitting there going, no man, we won't hunt today because animals are sacred. No, the past was messy too, but the scale of what we're doing to the planet, of course, is unprecedented, and that's the problem. It's not about we're bad people, it's just that it's the number of us and what we're doing on a scale, and the capitalist systems are allowing it. Sorry,
symptomatic of empire is what I call it. Like I tell people, nobody knows what silphium is, because Rome caused climate change in northern Africa, and now one of the most popular plants of the ancient world, we don't even really know what it is, because climate change, thousands of years ago. Like, we think of this as a modern issue, and we're really, certain things like scars on the environment are symptoms of empire, and it says more to do with empire than it does to do with humanity in and of itself.
But look, I've got to go in about 5 minutes because I've got a train to catch. But is there? I mean, I hope we get a chance to do this again. I'm just so sorry it took so long for us to set it up. But I wondered if you had any. I've got new people who haven't found me before in this live, but also hopefully there's people that will find you. You must go and follow Chase the Night. It's great, upbeat but intelligent and insightful content. What do you have any sort of final statements that you want to make? Any final reflections? I always think of Jerry's final words. It's always my growing upbringing, the Jerry's thing. And be kind to each other. What was he say? Take care of yourself and to each other, or something crap. But anyway, if you've got any final Jerry Springer style.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to close, I just like to tell everybody, like I always say, and that's to fight just battles and have flawless victories, right? Because every single day we make a choice whether we fight the best fight we can or whether we quit. And we can't always be the shining examples, the paragons of humanity every day. But as long as you fight on your hill and you pick your hill to die on, you're doing better than a lot of folk. And just like Jerry said, be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. And
That's
Professor,
the
thank
phrase.
you so much.
Well, dude, it's been really great. I've needed this to have a chat with at this time, and I personally needed it. But I think my hopefully some people in the audience enjoyed this too. And thank you again, Meggie, for defending us against the unhinged and the unmentionable and the deplorables who will.
Yes, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. But hopefully we'll talk again, man. And
yes,
but for now, I've got to go. But
yeah, I got kids to go pick up in about 20 minutes. Have a great day, Professor.
Take care, man. Bye now.
Peace and power.
If you've enjoyed this Archaeodeath video, why not check out the Archaeodeath blog at howardwilliamsblog.wordpress.com.